Hey everybody, how's it going? Well, it is time for a summary of the vacation. One of the things that I'll say is this is Monday, the 21st. We got home early Sunday morning, about 1:30 Sunday morning, and I was surprised at how quickly you become acclimated to being in another time zone. Pennsylvania's 3 hours ahead of us, and I didn't get to bed, as I said. It was probably about, I don't know, 2 or so before I finally got to bed. And I woke up at 6 o'clock Sunday morning. And I was exhausted. I was tired, but I woke up anyway. And it dawned on me, wow, I'm still acclimated to that time zone. And Sunday, all day, yesterday, I was tired. I took at least 2 naps, and then went to bed relatively early last night and slept all night and woke up at 7 this morning, and I feel fine now. I feel like I'm all caught up. But I didn't notice it so much going back there. It didn't seem to have such an effect on me, other than the first day it was like, oh yeah, I don't usually sleep this late. Well, I usually don't. But I acclimated to it by the next day there as well. But anyway, a summary of the trip. I know that, as I always say, this isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I like doing it. My opinions about things, talk about some of the things we saw and did. We flew on United Airlines. We flew from LAX with a connection in Chicago to Pittsburgh, and the same way coming back, Pittsburgh to Chicago and Chicago home. And the reason that we used connecting flights was because the nonstops would not have fit our schedule as well. It would have gotten us there. We would have lost a whole day both ways coming back. And I didn't realize that Jennifer had taken Monday today. I didn't realize that she took today off, or we could have stayed another day, and I could have made things a little different. But it doesn't really matter. I don't mind the connection flights. It's not that big a deal. We flew first class. I myself had never flown before in my life that the railroad didn't pay for it. To send me to training in Chicago. I went to Chicago a few times, Salt Lake City, Houston, went to quite a few places, but I'd never paid for flying, and the railroad certainly wasn't going to pay for first class. Jennifer never flown first class, so I thought, what the heck? I don't know. I may never fly again. So, yeah, we did first class. It was roomier, as there's only, in first class, there are only 20 seats, 2 seats on each side, so you don't get wedged in between somebody or against somebody or whatever. Got plenty of room to stretch out and do whatever, and you're treated like royalty. I will say that. I don't know. Was it worth it? I don't know. It was considerably more expensive. In reality, it probably isn't worth it. But when you figure by the time when you fly first class, your bags, you don't have to pay anything for your bags. It's like $50 a bag if you go the other way. All your food, all your drinks. And I don't drink, but Jennifer had a couple of drinks. But anything you get in economy other than water costs you. I'm not sorry I did it. And who knows? If we fly somewhere else again, we may do first class again. I don't know. We'll see. We parked our truck. We live about 100 miles from Van Nuys. LAX is about another 20 miles, another 15 miles or so south of Van Nuys. The flyaway also has long-term parking for $6 a day. So we just drove the truck down there, parked it there, and picked it up when we were done. $6 a day. You're not going to get anything close to that for long-term parking at LAX. So if you're going that way, I suggest going to what there's the one in Van Nuys and there's one at Union Station, but I don't know what their long-term parking situation is at Union Station. But the one at Van Nuys, highly recommend it. When we got to Pittsburgh, I had a car reserved, a rental car. We got a Nissan Rogue, which is like a mid-size SUV crossover kind of thing, and the car was comfortable and smooth, but it was gutless. But it was comfortable and smooth, and once you get out on the freeway, cruised at whatever speed you wanted to cruise it at. Not that there were a lot of freeways on to cruise on in Pennsylvania. When we got to Pittsburgh, we took a late night flight on Friday, and arrived in Pittsburgh at 9:30 in the morning on Saturday. And it was a long way up to where Tracy lived, and so we figured we'd do a couple of other things, and she wasn't going to be home that day anyway. So we drove down to Washington, Pennsylvania, which is just south of Pittsburgh, to the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum. And that was pretty cool. Trolley museums are kind of all the same. I've been to quite a few here and there. You get to ride them and stuff. This one had two different routes, a short route and a long route. And it was pretty cool. They had a really neat museum with a lot of interactive stuff. So if you're ever in the Pittsburgh area and you want to go see something neat, I recommend the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, which is about, 20 miles, 15 miles south of the airport at Pittsburgh International. We spent the first night in Indiana, Pennsylvania. And one thing I noticed about Pennsylvania while looking through maps and driving around, they have a lot of towns named after other states. That have Indiana, Utah, California, and Washington, to name a couple. Probably some more around the state, but I thought that was interesting. Our friends Tracy and Mike, I've known Tracy since 1986. I'd only met Mike once when they came out to visit quite a few years ago. But they live in a town called Osceola Mills, Pennsylvania, and the closest town of any import to them is State College, and Tracy works at Penn State. She works for Penn State. Mike works at Penn State, and so they both work in State College. And so anyway, we went up. Osceola Mills Osceola Mills is a small town. The population is about 1,200, and is a neat little town. But we got up there Sunday morning, whatever time it was. Took us about 2 hours to drive from Indiana up to where they live. So we just hung out at Tracy and Mike's on Sunday, and we did walk up. They live right by an open pit coal mine, an active open pit coal mine. So we walked up the road that went up to that, and they weren't working. No one was working that day unless they were down in the pit, and I couldn't see them. You couldn't see the whole mine. It was gigantic. But they live up at the top. It's at the top of the Appalachian Mountains. And so this coal mine, when you got up there, and you'll see in the video, you can look around and you're at the top of the mountains. And the Appalachians aren't mountains as we know them in California. They're more like hills. On Monday, Tracy took the day off, and we drove up to State College. Mike had to work, but we drove up to State College and went to the, she showed us around Penn State, and I couldn't believe how big their football stadium is. And Mike said they just approved a $600 million upgrade for the stadium at Penn State. But we went to the Penn State Creamery and had some ice cream, and it was really, really good. But it was a beautiful college. Of what we got to go see, we didn't go to the whole thing, but everything back there is older than it is out here in California, so it had that going for it. On Tuesday, we decided we were going to go check out the Lincoln Caverns, and so they're about 40 miles, if that, from Osceola Mills, and we went down through a town called Tyrone. And there's the Norfolk Southern, there's a station there, an Amtrak station. Didn't see any trains while we were there, but they had cool old branch lines and some abandoned rails and stuff that you'll see in the videos. But the Lincoln Caverns, if you're in that area, they're pretty cool. They're inexpensive. They're nothing like if you've been to Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, where I have been, or Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico, where I have not been. But I've seen the pictures. So nothing like that. Mammoth Caves in Kentucky they're gigantic. I understand there are little tiny places like these ones. But the actual Lincoln Cavern we went in was real tight. Had to crouch down a lot and, move your way through some of it. It wasn't claustrophobic, but it was cramped. Then the Whispering Rocks cave that is on the same property, the formations are bigger, the caves are bigger, and have more stuff, and it was pretty cool. If you're in the area watching trains, I suggest going and checking out Lincoln Caverns. Wednesday, we went to Horseshoe Curve in Altuna. And all the photographs and paintings that I've ever seen of the Altuna Curve, Horseshoe Curve, are from above, where you can see the whole curve. But the place where you go see it, it has like a little park, a viewing area, but it's at track level in the center of the curve. And if you've ever been to Pennsylvania, you know that the terrain is all trees. And so you can't see an entire train. But it's still cool. You can see them coming around the curve. I caught uphill trains down. You'll see it. And the only train I was able to see all of, they ran one locomotive with one private car behind it. There's an incline there. And you have to pay to get in there. If you want to go up to the viewing area, you have to pay. You have to go through there's a museum and a gift shop there. You have to go in the gift shop, pay. It's not very much. I don't remember how much. I didn't pay that much attention to it because I was going anyway, no matter what. But there's an incline that takes you up. It's about 300 feet, I would estimate, up to the top. Steep, but the incline was broken, so we had to take the stairs. And I was like, oh man, my quadriceps were burning. Jennifer was getting tired. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. We got up to the top, and there were 3 people up there who were in their 80s, so I stopped complaining. And it was cold that day, cold, windy, it was sleeting, but it was still really cool. I don't mind that kind of weather. Jennifer isn't into watching trains or really giving a heck about the videos I shoot of them, so we caught the first train, and she went and read some of the stuff about the history of the place, and then she went back down to the car. I stayed up and caught a couple of more trains, as you'll see. And the museum, I was really disappointed in the museum for such a famous and historic place. They're really, I don't know, it just wasn't a very interesting museum. I think the Tehachapi Depot Museum is a lot more interesting. So if you're up in Tehachapi, go check it out. Then we went to into Altoona. The Horseshoe Curve is actually just outside of town. And in Altoona, down at the old yards and everything, is the Altuna, the Railroad Workers Museum or whatever. The Altuna Railroad Museum. It's one of the old shop buildings. And it's a 3-story museum, and that one is nice. That is a very nice museum with cool interactive stuff, great history. It's really cool. I didn't shoot much video in there. The video for that day is already going to be quite long enough. But I do recommend going to the Horseshoe Curve, and I do certainly recommend going to the museum. Thursday, we went to Gettysburg. While neither of us are sorry we went, it was the most disappointing part of the trip, the part of the things that we saw. I love history. I am not really into detailed Civil War history. I knew the Battle of Gettysburg was probably the pivotal battle of the Civil War, and I knew it was a 3-day battle, but I didn't know all the details of it. And we came into the area from the west, and the first thing you get to is McPherson's Ridge, Oak Hill, and those are the places where the very first battle took place on the first day of the Gettysburg battle. And it was neat to be there. It's the whole thing is kind of sobering, I guess, those parts of it, but it was neat to be where it all started, and you could look out over the town of Gettysburg, but it was neat to be there. And we went to Cemetery Hill, whichever one it is, where the final battle was fought, and that is where Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, and there's a big monument there where that happened. And it was cool to be standing where one of the most famous speeches in American history was actually given. And beautiful, though. I will say that. Absolutely beautiful area. They have everything they keep it up really well. Gettysburg itself, the town, is nothing but a tourist trap, and it is extremely crowded. We were there, as I said, on a Thursday in October, and it was absolutely packed. I cannot imagine what that place must be like on a weekend or a holiday or in the summer or when they're doing one of their reenactments. I can't imagine what it would be like to try to get around. Because the museum that's at the Visitors Center at Gettysburg was really cool. That was a really cool museum. They have a film you can watch about the Civil War, and they have what's called a cyclorama, which is a 360-degree screen, and they have the story of the final battle that was fought there at Cemetery Hill Ridge. That was really cool. I'd recommend that. And if you're really into Civil War history, definitely go check it out. If you want to take your kids there and teach them the importance of the Civil War, that would be cool. But if it's just like if you're just you and your wife and Civil War is really not your thing, I don't recommend it. One of the things was on the way to Gettysburg, we stumbled across the East Broad Top narrow gauge steam excursion railroad in Rock Hill Furnace, Pennsylvania. And we just kind of turned down a road, and this steam engine was crossing the roads, and there was a depot, and we went down and talked to him. It was going to be an hour before the train left, and then the train ride was an hour. And we said, well, let's go ahead and get to Gettysburg. And both of us agreed after Gettysburg, it's like, we should have just taken that train. We didn't. So maybe next time. I did see enough interesting stuff back there, both of us did, that we wouldn't mind going back. One of the things we were going to do was we were going to go to Niagara Falls. But when we were at the Horseshoe Curve, we were going to do Niagara Falls on Thursday, spend the night, and then go down, spend the night, and check Gettysburg out on Friday. But when we got done at the Horseshoe Curve and went back to the car, Jennifer had a pouty look on her face, and she goes, "I'm pissed." And I thought, oh, great, something's going on at home. I was like, why? What's up? Because there's this really cool steam train ride that I really want to do, but we're not going to have time. And I said, we can change our plans. We don't have to go we don't have to go to Niagara. She said, yeah, I don't want to go to Niagara Falls. I can see that on TV. But I would like to go there maybe next time we go. So it was Jennifer's thing to go ride the train that I'll talk about in a second. On the next day, on Friday, it was called the Everett Railroad, and it left from Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, south to Martinsburg. Martinsburg? Yeah, Martinsburg. Everything back there is a burger of ill. And so we went down there, and it's not very far. It's just the other side of Altuna, so it's not very far from Osceola Mills. And they had a neat steam engine, standard gauge, but we paid a little bit more and got our own little table in one of the cars, and they give you a box lunch. And so we took that ride. It was really cool. It was worth it as far as I was concerned. It wasn't really out of the way or anything. A beautiful locomotive that pulled us. You'll see all that in the video. And the car was a neat setup. You got to watch they pulled the train into a Y and moved the locomotive back around to the other end of the train, and you'll see all that in the video. But yeah, I highly recommend that. And someone had told me, I'd posted something on Facebook, and someone said, did you go to Cassandra? And Cassandra is my oldest daughter's name, but I said, no, I didn't know anything about it. So that day when we got done with all that, we went over to Cassandra, and it's a really just a little tiny town, but there's a footbridge across a double track. Actually, it looks like triple track there, and comes through a cut. You'll see it in the video. Really cool place. A lot of people rail fanning there, sitting around. I caught one train there, and then when we were leaving, we got stopped by another train. You'll see all that in the video. But really cool place. And again, they say that about 50 trains a day run on those lines. Over my overviews and opinions of Pennsylvania as a whole, we drove just under 1,000 miles, going and checking things out. Nothing in Pennsylvania, at least the things that we were going to see, there's not much these places aren't close together. You got to drive a long way. Gettysburg was about 2 hours from Osceola Mills, and some of these places were a half hour, some 45, but it was hard to get more than one thing in a day. There was that, And there's no difference in terrain or geology. Everywhere we went, maybe eastern Pennsylvania is different, but everywhere we went, the terrain was all the same. It was rolling hills, ridges, bluffs, covered in gorgeous, colorful trees, and but the whole part, everywhere we went, looked just like that. And after a while, you're like, it's beautiful, but it's a little tedious. I'm used to California. I can drive an hour up, going up the valley is the only place where the scenery doesn't change. But I can go an hour in either direction, being a completely different kind of scenery and geology. It's, I guess I'm spoiled. The roads in Pennsylvania, all the roads we drove on, freeways and back roads, all seem to be in pretty good shape. Very few that I had any issues with. I have any issues with any of them. Didn't see a lot of potholes or busted up roads, and for the temperature differences that they experienced back there, you would think that they would be worse. But yeah, roads are actually in pretty good condition, and for the places that we went, very, very few freeways. It was almost all back roads through the hills and countryside, and there's a town every couple of miles. You come to another little bitty town. They have a lot of strange signs and laws. In California, if you want to make a right turn and you can fit between the curb and the car going straight, you can make that right turn. You can't do that in Pennsylvania. You can't use the shoulder to make a right turn. And I did that one time. We were going to the Harley shop in Duncansville, and I was already in the shoulder to turn, and I saw the sign that said no right turns from the shoulder. And so thankfully I was driving a rental car that had Virginia plates on it, so they couldn't yell at me for being a stupid Californian. But you'll be going in California, if you're going to turn left and you're going down and you're on a one-lane street and you're going to turn left, there's usually a left turn lane. Sometimes you have to stop and block everybody, but there's usually a left turn lane or a two-way left turn lane. But in Pennsylvania, a lot of times, you're going straight. If you want to keep going straight, you got to move over into the right lane, because the going straight becomes the left turn only lane. And I got caught in a couple of those and had to make my way through going around blocks and figuring out how to get back onto that road. Lots of stop signs. You only have to stop if you're going straight. If you're turning right, you don't have to stop. Kind of strange, but I shouldn't say strange. It's just different. Just a lot different. I imagine when people from Pennsylvania come to California the first time, they're going, wow, I can't believe you can do that here. What the heck? One of the other things that, as I talked about houses or towns being every couple of miles, and the houses are right next to the road. Even Tracy and Mike, their place was on a real back road. Didn't even have any dividing line, white lines or anything on it. And their house was probably 6 feet from the edge of the road. And it's like that. There are very few front yards in Pennsylvania, but a lot of big backyards. The drivers, I'm going to say they were terrible drivers back there, not like Oregon and Arizona, but inattentive. It didn't seem whipping in and out of traffic or doing crazy ass things, whatever. But they just didn't seem to be paying much attention to what they were doing. Cars weaving, like people on their phones, just not paying attention. I don't know. What I did notice a lot of were cars pulling out in front of you. Not just to me. I saw cars doing it to other people. Just pull right out in front of you. Turn right off of a side street right in front of cars, or turn left in front of you. Go across. And we did see a couple of accidents. Didn't see them happen, but we came up on a couple of accidents that it looked like that's what happened. So if you're driving in Pennsylvania, be very aware when you're around intersections and see a car sitting there that they're likely to pull out in front of you. That's another thing that it took me a while to get used to, is that people will have their cars backed into their driveways that are right at the edge of the road, and it looks like they're getting ready to pull out, but they're not. They're just parked in front of their car, just right next to the road. Very strange, very different. Gas prices, not that much cheaper than California. It looked like the average price for gas at the less expensive places back there were about $3.50, $3.60 a gallon, and out here at California right now they're about $4 a gallon, 409 around the corner from my house here. So not that much different back there. And of course, the name brand ones were a little more expensive, just as they are out here. And the last thing, Pittsburgh Airport, I mentioned it a little earlier. When we drove through Pittsburgh, that was the only real heavy traffic other than Gettysburg that we went through, but it wasn't that bad. Pittsburgh's actually not that big a town. I don't know what the population is, but I think the metro area is probably more than 1 million, but Pittsburgh itself is, I'm almost certain, under 1 million people. The freeways were narrow, small, lots of 2-lane freeways going through a major city, but we didn't encounter, it was a Saturday afternoon when we went through, we didn't encounter any terrible traffic. A couple of cool tunnels. I'm not sure which river we drove across on the Pitt Bridge, but yeah, interesting, cool scenery. But the Pittsburgh Airport, once you got through the city of Pittsburgh, opened up again, nice fast shot to the airport, no issues getting the rental car turned in, and the Pittsburgh Airport wasn't very busy when we were there. Right in, places to eat, and really laid back. Chicago and LAX, not so much. If you've ever flown into or out of either one of those airports, you know it's a madhouse 24 hours a day. So anyway, that's about all I've got. I recommend Pennsylvania. If you've never been there, I recommend checking it out. It is a very beautiful place, very rural, as I said. A lot of back roads, a lot of scenery. It does all kind of get to looking the same, but it's still really pretty, and I highly recommend it. The people, everybody back there seemed to be friendly. The restaurants we ate at, we were treated very well. And so, yeah, if you want to go to Pennsylvania and you've never been there, I highly recommend going there. And if you're going to go back there in Railfan, I saw tracks everywhere. So pretty much didn't matter where you were, you'd be able to see trains. I've heard that the Norfolk Southern Railroad cops are pricks. I don't know. I didn't encounter any of the places I went or the places I was waiting, but I don't know. I didn't see any junk along the tracks. It didn't appear that the thievery back there is the issue it is in California. But so anyway, if you're going to go back there just to check things out, I recommend it. And if you're going to go back there to Railfan, I recommend it. All right, here are the URLs to my PayPal and my Patreon. If you can help out the channel that way, I'd sure appreciate it. Keep shooting me the ideas. Drop in the comments below. Shoot me an email at motopoet59@gmail.com. Like, share, subscribe. Click on the bell if you want to be notified of future content. And let's get on with the videos of Pennsylvania.